being, like living, is just to be in the moment. And if it comes with a fling, why not?
And do you travel a lot?
Yeah, I do.
And when you travel, do you find yourself in these temporary romances or whatever?
I don't look for it, like, per se, like that's my top priority, but if it happens, it happens.
Okay, got it. You wanted to talk about baby mama and baby daddy culture, but you don't have kids, right?
No, I do not.
Okay.
No.
Do you? What specifically did you want to talk about?
I just feel like, personally, in my opinion, it's really shoved down in the pop culture. Like, it's very normalized to have a child without being in marriage. So I would say, like, I am more traditional in the sense of, like, I think if you're going to raise a family, I would want you to be, or myself to be in a committed marriage. Like, why would I want to have children with just anybody and not be in a marriage? That I definitely feel like I'm more traditional, I would say. And I guess also that comes to the idea of, like, I am very liberal. Like I said, I'm like free-spirited, but there are certain aspects to myself that I do think in traditionalism is important.
Wait, just some points of clarification here. You just said you're you're liberal?
I would say, like, there's a lot of liberal ideas that I have, but I definitely lean more towards the middle left.
Okay, middle left. But you said, and in your notes here, you also wrote you're very old school and traditional.
When it comes to that.
Comes to
baby
what?
mama.
Dating?
Just having children outside of marriage. I don't understand.
Oh, okay. Just having kids out of marriage. When it comes to you, and this is what you wrote, you said you're very old school and traditional. Can you be, I guess, specific and give detail? How are you old school and traditional?
When it comes to marriage, I think if you want to be married, like, that's, to me, marriage is traditional. Like, you want to have children, you want to build a family. To me, that just seems reasonable. That seems like the best way to raise a family. To have children outside of a marriage, I think it's like so shoved down our pop culture ideas that, like, we should have. Women should be able to do whatever they want. They can have kids outside of marriage. It's fine. I don't think that, to me personally, that's just not really in my vocabulary.
So that's your view when it comes to having children outside of marriage, your desire. I assume you want to get married?
Yes, but that's not my priority.
What's your priority?
My career.
Okay, gotcha. And remind me, you're 28?
Yes.
Okay. Go ahead.
How could you expect the traditional element if you're not preparing yourself to be in that situation?
I don't think I'm ready to be a mother or a wife quite yet. I haven't found the right person, and the last thing I would want to do is get into an awful, unrealistic marriage that leads to divorce and to have children just because I felt pressured to have children.
But if you're not preparing yourself for that type of a lifestyle, do you think that you'll just suddenly turn traditional when you're ready to get married?
No, I think there's a lot of healing that I need to do within myself. I would want to raise a great family. I want to have kids, like, maybe in the future, but I don't, in a good mindset and a healthy lifestyle. And I am still traditional. I'm not just talking about myself. I think women and men should be in committed relationships to have children, not just talking about myself. I'm just talking about in general.
When you said, I haven't found the right person, doesn't that imply that the right person is already traditional?
I wouldn't say so. I'm sorry, can you clarify
So
that?
you're like, I don't want to get married yet. I don't think I found the right person. Just that part of it. Wouldn't the right person assume that he's already traditional and wants to have kids?
I hope so. I would also love if they didn't feel pressure to have a family. And maybe if it happens, it happens. If it doesn't, it doesn't. It shouldn't be like a pressure of, like, I want kids and you need to provide me kids. But if it happens, that's an amazing life.
The reason I ask that is because, like, I don't understand this. Like, women, they want to find the right guy, right? Like a high value man, they call it, fits all these criterias. When you find that man, why are you what do you do with that man, right? If your current view of dating is simply just to, like, have fun, it's like, I always ask these people, same thing, it goes back on the men too. They want to find the right woman, and I always ask, why? Then what do you do? Because the only answer to me that makes any sense is to marry and potentially have a family, to build something. So I'm wondering what all of this dating is, if ultimately both the men and the women are looking for the right man, right? But for what? Or the man is looking for the right woman. For what? Like, if it's not for marriage, I'm not sure. What is it, like a temporary like chapter in life, you know?
I think people come and go in your life. In my honest opinion, I'm very spiritual. I think not people don't just come to your life for no reason. There's always something that they provide for you. So even if they're not in a marriage or end up in a long-term relationship, I learned something from them. I'm not always out here like, he's the one. Is he gonna be the one? No, I mean, if it is, that's great. I take a lot of accountability that I am a hot mess myself when it comes to dating, which is why I don't attract the best kind of individuals when I date. But
that's what I like to, back to what Jay said, and this is pretty much for everyone, is that if in the future you see, especially as a women, because you guys have a time constraint, if you see in the future that you'll probably want to be married, you actually have to start that traditional practice of being that woman before you actually find the husband. That's why I asked, wouldn't the future husband already have the mindset of being traditional, like finding you and be like, cool, let's do this? But if you're not already living that, that's why Jay asked, what do you suddenly wake up when you find the right man and suddenly you're traditional? Like,
no, I can see what you're saying. What I mean? No, definitely having direction. I see what you're saying. I think, yes, the person that I would want to end up should be looking for marriage. I just don't like being pressured into things. So if I'm in a first date and he's like, I want to get married, that'd freak me out. I'd be like, I don't even know who you are. This is a first date. I would rather talk about this later on in life.
I think we're not saying you should rush into marriage, but rather that when you're married, it's a different lifestyle, and it doesn't change when you're married. Like, you have to be prepared for marriage. Yeah. So you have to begin preparing before, not that you have to rush into marriage, is what I'm saying. So in other words, you need to give up the liberal centrism if you want a traditional guy. No traditional guy wants a liberal girl. Because let me give you an example. I had a friend who dated a liberal girl back when we were in our 20s, and he wanted to marry her. I said it's not a good idea. He got her pregnant. She aborted the baby and then took off. And I think because he saw that because she had this attitude of not being traditional, that she was not going to make a good wife. She ran off, did not what he wanted, right? So if you want to, like, what you put out is what you attract, is what I'm trying to say.
Can you be more specific in like the liberal definition?
Well, I mean,
you
you describe yourself as a left of center, I think is what you said, something like that. Yeah. But I mean, like, if I'm a guy and I'm out there and let's say for the sake of argument, I'm a high value male, maybe I'm not, but let's say that if I am, like, if I was a traditional minded guy and I wanted a wife, like, I'm going to be looking for the qualities already there, not like, can I make her into a traditional woman when we get married? I'm going to look for the qualities already being there.
Isn't that a lot of pressure for someone, though? Don't you think, like, everyone's in their own journey in creating the best version of themselves? Not everyone's going to be perfect and ready for anything in life.
What do you mean by traditional man? Like, when you describe a traditional man, what are you looking for? Because you got to make sure that the net, like, I think what they're saying is, if you want to attract a certain type of fish, you got to use the right type of lure, right? And so when you say, what's the fish you're trying to attract?
For me, there's traditionalism, but also open-mindedness, like being able to, marriage is great, that's traditional, yes, but being able to also have different ideas of pathways in life and not being so, so single-minded and thinking like this is the only path in life, like this.
Well, hold on, that's like traditional pluralism though. So like, is there any tradition you can point to that has survived the test of time that didn't hold to a fairly narrow approach to what it is? Sounds like you're saying traditionalism kind of looks a certain way, like the structure looks a certain way, but ultimately, what's the tradition that's being carried through? Or is there any structure of the family, or does it just look like a family on TV? You know what I mean? Like, a tradition itself, in every sense of the word, comes from a long lineage of people that hold it together and keep it, safeguard it, protect it, keep it rigorous. So it sounds like what Kyla's asking is like, well, what is that? It sounds like it's like an image of it, but it's not the practice of it.
Do you want him to be the breadwinner? Do you want him to make more income than you?
I think that's a great question. I think if they are the breadwinner, that's great. They don't have to be. Like, I
Okay.
would love to make my own income as well. And
Should he
provide
pay
myself.
for dates? Should he be the one paying for dates?
Hopefully, yes. But
Would it be an ick? Be honest. Would it be an ick if he didn't?
I would say yes.
Okay, so you want a guy who's paying for the date. You're open to economically being on the same level. So if you were dating somebody for a while and he was making like $30K less a year than you for a while, would that be okay with you? Like, is that, say he's going to school. Is that okay with you if you're the one making the money at the time and he's going to school?
I don't think currently where I'm at right now that it's not a priority, but I think it would definitely be something that would make me want not to be with them.
Gotcha. Okay.
Yeah.
So like you're kind of wanting some traditional gender roles, like he's being at least the breadwinner mostly throughout the relationship, or
Yeah.
at least on parity. You want him to pay for that and stuff like that. Okay. Gotcha. I just wanted to understand what you
What
were
if he fits all of the checks for traditionalism that you are looking for,
Okay.
and the only thing he's looking for is you, in addition to your compatibility, but the most important thing on his list is that you mother his children. That's the only thing in return he's expecting. Is the expectation that Kyla just asked of you, like you have an expectation, right?
Okay.
But if his expectation is that an equal exchange?
I honestly, I don't think so. Having a kid is so like life altering to your body, physical, mental, to a woman. That just seems to me, in like the most simplest terms, I'm giving away my life, to be honest. So a lot of the times it has to be the right person, and it has to be like when I feel like it's right. And right now I don't.
Well, yeah, the question wasn't like when it. Of course, there's a when. Sometimes you don't know when.
Okay.
Sometimes you think it's not the right time, and it actually is.
Okay.
But I'm pointing to more like if you have a set of standards
Yeah.
for the man,
Okay.
and let's say it is from every perspective looking at it, he matches all of the of the
Okay.
criteria.
Yeah.
His criteria for you is to mother the child. I'm wondering, how do you know when you're at an equal exchange? Because now you just said, well, I want the man to be traditional. I want him to pay for things. I want him to lead the way. I want him to lead the family, protect me, whatever else you add in there. But it sounds like one of the most important things for that traditional man is going to be the thing that you're actually like, whoa.
Yeah.
And it seems like it's not a equal exchange, because what is it thereafter ultimately, aside from that?
You don't think it's fair to say to have a child is like not I wouldn't compare it to me saying like provide for a date to be able to pay a bill. Like, I don't think that's the same as having a
Oh no, I agree. I'm not talking about the single instance. We're looking at sort of obligation from his perspective. That's the
Okay.
kind of man he is. So that'll follow through with protecting you,
Okay.
providing the home, making the home, like protecting the home, everything. And fulfill. It sounds like your liberalism still kicking in, and you're
Yeah.
like, well, I want to fly to Tahiti, right? And you're going to live your life. And that's why Jay was asking, well, what is it you're grabbing from the traditional bin from the man, and what are you providing from the traditional bin from his perspective? If it's not children, what is it? I mean, what else could it be? Like,
Are you wanting to homemake a lot for him? Like, when you say providing children, do you just mean you don't want to give up your career for children?
Yeah, I feel like having kids, like, it's selfish to not center your life around them. Like, that's a huge life decision. And right now, I have so much on my plate, career, financial, just everything, that I don't think it would be fair to have a kid right now, or probably in a while.
Yeah, I think that's fair. I think one of the things that I think when I look at relationships, there's like these different categories and boxes of percentages that we give, right? So there's like domestic, there's income, there's emotional, and then there's also like child rearing, parenting, right? And so like in my mind, these things don't have to be 50% the whole way across, right? But they need to be exchangeable in a way where both partners look at them. So say, for example, if the husband is expected to give like 70% of the income and you work like part-time or 3/4 of the time, I'm not sure what your workload is, or maybe you give 60% of the income. That means other areas have to flex to kind of accommodate that, right? And so I think the important question that men have to ask when they're going into a relationship is going like, well, what am I offering, and what are the type of women that I'm interested in looking for? And as a woman, you have to go, well, what am I willing to offer? and which men are interested in looking for those things, right? Because I would agree most like more conservative, super trad men, they're not as interested in like the woman's income. Most trad men are pretty open to being like 60 to 70% of the income. But what they look for in exchange would be like higher domestic labor. So like they do the income labor, the woman does maybe higher domestic labor. If she's still working, it has to be back and forth.
I don't even think liberal men care about women's income.
Well, I would just disagree in the economy. Like the reality is very few men can provide for a family on one economy. Some men are like super blessed.
What
but
I'm
most
saying
are
is
not.
though, I understand the arguments of like, okay, economically speaking, you need a two-income household. That's just the economic reality for most couples. What I'm saying is that men, it's not going to make men more attracted to women. They'll do it out of economic necessity, but not like, oh, she's a high earner, I'm more attracted to her.
I agree.
It could be like a nice positive, for example, for a liberal guy, but I don't even think liberal men are going to be like, oh, she's more attractive because she's a high earner.
I agree. What I'm talking about is once you're in the relationship, these exchanges are going on. I think it's a disservice. So what happens when I listen to feminists and like man spheres fight with each other is women really ignore the income labor that men often do. They're just kind of like it's like a self-assumed thing that men are bringing to the table, and then men will often ignore as well the economic labor that women are bringing in, and which is why I've listed multiple facets. Because I agree, men aren't like looking at women who are making like $100,000 and being like, ooh, baby, right? They're being like, damn, she's hot. Right. And like she makes me feel good when I'm with her. That's more or less what most people are doing. But once you get into the relationship, part of the exchange, if we're all being honest with each other, has to be like, who's bringing the income, where and how much, and how do we balance out the other areas? And most people say the man should be bringing in higher income. And typically, one of the partners is also doing higher emotional labor to like make the relationship work.
What is emotional labor?
It depends on the couple, right?
that?
So say, for example, you've got one partner that comes in with like a lot of emotional baggage.
Sure.
So I'm going to use a man I'll use a woman for an example first, because I think people would find them more appealing, and then I can use a man. For a woman, maybe she like had a messy childhood. So she's a little bit anxious. She's more depressed. So she needs to be comforted more often.
Or you could just not date her. That's also not.
Yeah, but that's not what we're talking. We're talking about like what would be the emotional labor. In the case of a man having lots of baggage, he might have lots of anger issues.
Yeah.
He might kind of stonewall and not communicate, right? So then the woman might have higher emotional labor to make the relationship work, because you have to be able to talk to each other and emotionally relate to one another.
Jay, it sounded like you maybe wanted
Do
to
you
comment
do
on
the
some
emotional baggage in y'all's relationship? I'm just curious. Like,
Are
are
you
you the one
asking-
that covers the emotional baggage?
I would say my husband is much more emotionally like solid than I am. I definitely like have a lot more baggage from my childhood.
I'm curious. I want to ask, if you don't mind, like, would you rather be in a situation where if you had an option of a dude who you liked and he made a lot of money, would you choose that if you had to be a homemaker versus your own career and out there like having to do your own thing and all that? Which would you prefer?
Naturally, I am very submissive, and I already do those things for fun. I like have fun cleaning and cooking, so it's something that but I don't look traditional, so it's.
But if you had a choice, which one would you prefer?
I would go with letting the man lead me and with the money, and
Right.
I would take on the responsibility of cleaning and cooking for the home and having the baby.
So that would be a better life for you than like
Yeah.
trying to fend for yourself
I
in
have to
LA.
admit it.
Okay. What
Yeah.
about you? Would you prefer that or not?
What, being like barefoot and pregnant and taken care of?
If the option of a guy who has a lot of money that you like, you genuinely are like, he's not a butthole, right? Or like you're a career woman doing your own thing and you have like a person that meets you halfway, which would you prefer?
Can I just use my relationship? Because that's obviously who I picked. When I got into the relationship, my husband hadn't graduated high school, didn't have a job. I was already high income earning and had the greatest income prospects. But for me, I learned pretty early to really deprioritize like surface stuff. I really wanted a man of character. Like that was the most important thing to me, is a man of high integrity and character, which I would say I got. Like Nick's genuinely amazing person. So for me, but I'm not saying that that's the typical woman experience. Like I recognize that I was very career motivated. And so in my mind, I did a mental calculus of going, that means I need to scale back the money expectations, because he's got to make a lot of trade-offs that aren't traditional for me. So I can't ask for the same traditional exchange. I did that when I was like 22. I just made that mental swap. But most women probably don't want to do that.
I wanted to go back to you for a second.
Yeah.
You lean more traditional, more submissive. but your appearances might throw people off. So when it is when you are searching for a man, what else are you going to have to do you think to attract? Because you might attract the not that, right? I mean, is it fair to say you might attract not that?
Yes, it is fair to say that. But when I date, I kind of go off of the first approach, like how they treat me. And, I don't really have a specific thing that I look for. I mean, I'm sorry, can you repeat the question?
It was like you lean more into traditionalism, submissive, so that it might be the case that the man you're actually looking for is actually traditional. But if your appearance
I have
can
standards.
throw people off, I was wondering, what do you do to find the traditional if the appearance might throw them off?
But I don't necessarily look for what a man can offer me. It's compatibility, like how does he make me feel? If he has all of that stuff, that's great, that's fine. But if it's a struggle together, that's what we have to do. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
What would you choose?
Oh, like the barefoot and pregnant or
Well, it's not just barefoot and pregnant. It's
Yeah.
also the guy that you like who has stable income, good money, right? Versus like you're on your own trying to fend for yourself, and then you find a guy that meets you halfway or something like that.
Yeah, no, like 100%. I would rather be at home taking care of kids, doing my thing there. I do not want to work at all. That's not my thing.
What about you?
No, I like working for myself.
Okay.
I'd like us to have like both our separate careers, honestly. I don't know.
I love my career so much, I would never give it up. So.
Okay. Wait, you never give up your career? Question, but so going back to this, you said you're old school, you're traditional. Would you be submissive to your husband?
What's submission to you?
Bowing. Oh, by the way, Brian, sorry to interrupt. When I went home last week, my entire family bowed to me when I walked in the door.
Oh, even the wife?
Everybody. Yeah.
Did you like it? Or?
Yeah, it was awesome.
Yeah, see, it's good. Basically,
I think that's a joke, right?
No, it's actual. Yeah, they did it. Well, it's like a meme. They did it as a meme, but it was just funny.
Mormons have an oath of perfect obedience. So
I'm just curious though, because I know it's different for everyone. Submission,
Yeah, willful
Did you just call him a
cooperation.
Sorry,
I was making a Mormon.
Yeah,
joke.
I know.
I mean, basically just deferring to his leadership, willful cooperation. So, yeah, deferring to his leadership. Now, for example, like I don't think submission is this. Your husband says jump off a bridge, and then you jump off a bridge. That's not. You would not be in contravention of being submissive if you're like, no, I'm not going to jump off a bridge. Or if your husband said, okay, sell these drugs or be a prostitute.
I would never be around someone like that.
What's that?
I would never be around someone like that. So.
But let me ask you this. Your husband says, well, let's say it's your boyfriend. Your boyfriend says, when we get married, you're taking my last name. Well, first off, let me ask, would you take your husband's last name?
No.
What about?
Okay, now we're getting somewhere. So you wouldn't take his last name?
No.
Just to be clear, you want to get married though, right?
Eventually, yes.
Question for you. If it's the perfect guy, he's the perfect guy. Most of us won't get the perfect partner ever. Would you take his last name then?
I still think that's a no.
So, question for you: would you hyphenate? Are you going to hyphenate, or are you going to keep
I'd
your
be
last
open
name?
to it. That sounds like a compromise. I'd be
That's
open
the
to
What
it.
if he's a billionaire,
No.
but he can help your career?
What if would you take? You wouldn't take any man's name?
I just said I would be open to hyphenating.
Can I ask you
What
a
about
question?
your father's last name?
Well, that was by.
Let me ask you a question on a couple questions on this. So you said you're old school and traditional.
In certain aspects, not all.
Okay, so you're picking and choosing. It's like it's a buffet. You get to pick and choose. Oh, I like this. Don't like that. Well, okay, there's some criticisms there, but so okay, you're picking and choosing. So, what do you consider traditional or modern? Hyphenation, or like how do you categorize these? Hyphenation,
that definitely.
or what's traditional?
That would be definitely like if I was to not take his last name, that's not traditional. I can agree with that.
Okay, cool. How about this? I'm trying to think of another example here.
Would it be icky if he demanded to take your last name? He just demanded it.
I would say yeah, because that's just why do I have to do something out of demanding? Like
Quite a couple questions for you. Do you want guys to pay for? I might have been gone when you guys talked about this. You want a guy to pay for first dates?
They don't have to, but if they do, that's a great look.
It's a plus. Do you want a guy who's a protector?
Yeah.
You want a guy who's a provider?
Yes, if you can.
You want a guy who's a leader?
Yes.
Okay. When it comes to the protection component, would you have an expectation, even on the first date or deeper into the relationship, that if you guys are walking along the sidewalk, that the guy is walking closer to the road where the cars are?
That's being a protector.
Protector. And would you expect this on the first date?
I would notice if he doesn't. So
Okay,
yes.
but it would be something you'd want in a relationship.
Yeah, of course.
And then you'd want him to protect you in other circumstances.
Yeah.
Okay. So just to be clear, you want old school. Do you want the guy to be old school and traditional in all the ways that men are typically old school and traditional?
I guess so. Well,
You want
in the way
your-
that,
you want your
in the
cake
way
and
that
eat it
benefits
too.
Total double
her.
standard.
In the
you
ways
want
that
your cake
benefits
and
her.
eat it too, yeah.
Right. And so just to be clear though, so you want a guy to essentially be willing to die for you, but you won't take his last name?
I think die for me. That's like I never said that.
But
I
isn't
said
that-
He's
protector.
protecting you.
Isn't that the even the walking closer to the where the cars are in the road?
Mm-hmm.
Isn't that an entailment of that very thing? Is he's willing to essentially put his life at risk to the point of death to protect
That's
you?
a valid question. I see your point of view, but I think at the end of the day, I would want to be with someone who would, if I said no to them and then I explained why, they would be understanding.
So you
know?
want to have the conversation. Like you
Yeah,
want to
of
have a
course.
conversation with the guy.
Yeah, yeah.
You want to explain to him why, despite him being traditional and old school, why he needs to accept your modernity.
Yes. Of
Okay,
course.
cool. So what if he wants to start having conversations with you about his traditional gender expectations? For example, babe, I want to have a conversation about who's going to pay. And
Yes.
it sounds like you're okay with that one. So, but he wants to have a conversation of, I'd actually prefer if you walked closer to the road so that you could conceivably get run over by a car.
Because he's
instead
modern.
of
He's a
me. He's a
modern
modern
man.
guy.
That would, to me, no, I would not.
You wouldn't like
No.
that. Okay.
I wouldn't.
Okay. And,
So you want an Italian hot mess that doesn't want you to take his last name, but is traditional in all the ways that you want.
okay. So what does the traditional old school guy get?
What do you mean get?
Well, so if we're going to lay out some of the
You
things
get access
that,
to a pop star.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, there
Rising,
you go.
right?
Pop star.
Access to a rising pop star is what
So if we lay out the things that you want, so you want a old school traditional guy, so the entailment there is going to be protecting and providing you. I think being willing to and potentially dying for somebody,
Like,
that
what
seems
do they
like a
get in
pretty...
return, is what you're saying?
What's
like,
that?
What do they get in return?
Yeah, what do they get that specifically you would be bringing?
Okay. I provide, I guess, the term submission. Like, I do love to be feminine. I do love to take care of people.
Okay, nurturing, sure.
Yeah, nurturing. I would say I love to cook. I'm a cooker. So,
Cooking,
yeah, I would
cleaning.
plike that. Being able to
So if
organize.
he told you to make a sandwich, you would do it?
Oh, that's so rude. Like in a rude way. Like, you
No,
know?
it was the most polite, charitable way one
So I
could
feel like
say,
people,
make a sandwich.
men who are like against feminism would always say like,
Are
go
you-
make me
are you
a
a
sandwich in the
feminist?
kitchen. Yes, I would say so.
Okay. And
I would cook for the man, but if he's like immediately going into the relationship expecting me to cook for him,
Yeah, he
and
expected
being
it.
like, well, you have to build trust. You can't just come into a relationship.
Wait. Build trust. On the first date, he's supposed to risk his life walking you on the sidewalk.
He doesn't have to risk his life. It's nice if he would.
It's nice if you made a sandwich.
nice if you die.
Well, if he's saying to me, "Hey, go in the kitchen and make me a sandwich," that's like rude. I feel like that's what men
Okay,
say.
what if he was like,
I think it's rude that he has to ask.
I
What-
mean, in
Why?
this exchange, right? Like, it would be rude if she said, "Walk on the sidewalk side for me," right? Like, everyone would agree, like, "Damn, that's like fucking bitchy," right? I think we would all agree that would be like a pretty bitch
Right.
move.
Well-
It'd also be really socially weird on a first date.
I don't
to be
know,
like,
actually.
Go make me a sandwich.
Actually-
I'd be like, "You have no social skills." I don't know about this
I
one,
actually
Chief.
disagree with that. I think if a man was like not aware of it and the woman was like, "What are you doing? Like, protect me." Like, I think a man would actually be responsive to that.
Yeah, maybe, but in general, I think men are a lot better at rolling with like criticism than women often
yeah,
are.
I'll engage with that. So I mean, okay, so you're saying the guy should just do it. Okay, so the woman should
I don't,
just make
to
the
be clear.
sandwich.
Just to be clear, I don't give a
We
fuck.
shouldn't
about
have to
men
tell her
walking
to
on
make the
side.
sandwich. She should just preemptively know to make the sandwich.
Well, here's where I would argue with the feminists.
She's nodding.
Here's where I'd argue with the feminist
You're in
side.
favor of the sandwich maker.
Yeah.
Okay.
No, I would say if you have certain like traditional chivalrous expectations that would be an immediate ick if like not foreseen, and you don't give any grace in between, but you expect high levels of grace in return, you're creating a very losing situation for all men, which is shitty to do. It's a shitty thing to do. However, if you have mutual grace and discuss these things, so for example, there's lots of things that my husband will ask me to do all the time, and I'm happy to do it, right? He might just be like sitting down watching TV and be like, hey, can you go get me a drink? Yeah, of course I can, right? But part of the exchange is that when he's up, I can also ask him to do the same. But that's something that we've also spoken
Did you take
about.
his last name?
Yeah.
Okay.
I just want to point out that even the way in which we're discussing this is in a very particular way. It's purely individualistic. Whereas if we're really talking about tradition, it used to be the case that women and men were actually raised that this is just what you do. So you actually just do this sandwich making, and you actually want to do it, right? Because it's part of a larger structure that's more valuable than your own individual preferences. Even as we discuss this, it's like, well, what's the contract? I think the important thing is to sit down and make a contract. And this is all modernity playing out. When we're talking about traditionalism, it's kind of a joke to ask anyone, no offense, but asking you about traditionalism, you're just like, you're taking it like it's like you're at a salad bar and you're like, here's some cucumbers. And what the traditional perspective is that the tradition is the entire room. It's not the salad. It's not the salad bar. And you're able to pick.
The issue, I think, the issue that we have with modernity dating is that the room is changed, right? The problem with the banquet table is that now, for the man to even be able to go to the table, this is going to break down immediately. I'll just say this: in the past, men could just work and make enough money for both of them and run the household. For most
But then
men,
feminism happened.
Well,
And then all the women went into the work and then lowered the dollar.
War happened, and but if we didn't have women go into the workplace, our GDP would have never competed.
poor
And if we didn't
GDP.
shift away from the gold backing, we
Only
would
thing
have.
that matters, the GDP.
The GDP is so fundamental for like everything when it comes to a nation state, because if you don't have a competitive GDP,
And you
your
have
enemies
no-
are able to stomp you.
What is your
That's super
nation if
important.
it's not bound in something bigger than the GDP?
But it's usually bound in some level of like civic nationality, which is going to be the bigger thing. But
You mean like duties?
no, more like patriotism, like love for country, not duties.
Yeah, but what's the identity of the country? GDP up?
No, it's like American.
Why
Like,
don't we
like,
swap
I'm an American.
Why don't we swap the flag with GDP up? With a thumbs up
I know
sign.
that you think this is good because it's like one of your memes, but it's nobody thinks this. GDP is important, if you don't understand, for being able to be competitive with your enemies so that they don't destroy you. When it comes to like a relationship and what we're talking about, we have this issue where the economy is so different now that men can't bring to the table sole providership by and large. Some can, and those ones I think do get to make different concessions and negotiations on the relationship, but by and large, men have to say, I need you to come to the table for economic income too. And that necessarily means that women get to have more negotiation power for what the relationship looks like and what they want in return. And the problem with a lot of modern men in dating is that all they feel like they can bring is money, because unfortunately our society has attached a male's value to their dollar, their wallet, which I think is a tragedy. And I think it's bad when women do that to men, and I think it's bad when men do that
But
to
you
men.
just said the GDP is like the key thing.
Yeah, GDP is really important, but that doesn't mean that
But then it's a tragedy that men's wallet matters
It's
so
a
much in a
contradiction.
relationship.
It's not a contradiction at all to say that, like,
It's
at
just
a
that your
nation
view's not
state
very
level,
thought out
GDP
is
is
the problem.
important to be competitive and not get destroyed by your enemies. But at an individual
Why
level,
is it sad?
it's a tragedy.
Why is it a tragedy
that
that the
men's only value in a relationship is the dollars that they
Look,
bring.
let me make it clear.
But it should be more value the character that they have.
It's your value
Kyla.
scale is arbitrary. Is the
It's
point.
not arbitrary.
It's also
is.
it's
not
worse.
arbitrary.
It's actually pretty bad. Is that at the individual level it's a tragedy, but at the nation level it's the ultimate value.
Yes.
It's
Your
not the
scale is
ultimate
arbitrary.
value.
You just
and when
said-
you argued it with
No.
me, you said it was subjective and relative, and what you believe is right. And
Relative
arbitrary.
doesn't mean arbitrary. These are not the same thing.
It
These are
me-
not the same
If you
words.
argue that it's
can
relative
be
and then you
coherently
make an
attached to.
argument, it's arbitrary.
That's not true at all.
It is. It is.
No.
You don't know basic philosophy.
Okay,
This
we can
was
go
our
back
2-hour
to this.
debate.
Presuppositionalism is
That has nothing to do
okay,
with
if you wanna
whether
go back there,
relativism is a
we can answer the
contradiction.
question
It has
before.
nothing to do
I'm
with
sorry, I'm
that.
so tired.
You don't understand the
Presuppositionalism
topics.
doesn't solve
You
Agrippa's
don't know
dilemma
anything
any
about
better
these
than
topics.
foundationalism.
You've never had a philosophy class to even speak on these topics.
I know you're saying this.
No, but you
at this
demonstrated
point,
that you
after
can't.
watching your debate, I don't think you have a degree in philosophy,
You
because
don't
you would
debate.
know that presuppositionalism
Relativism is
does not solve
subjectivism.
Agrippa's dilemma. It
That's
relies on
relevance
dogmatism.
to my position.
Unfortunately,
You don't
you offered
understand the terms that you
coherentism as
use.
the solution to Agrippa's trilemma,
Right,
but you
which is-
know, or you're not educated in it, you know that Agrippa's trilemma is not solved by presuppositionalism. It's not solved by anything.
It is solved.
It is not.
because it's a
Coherentism
specific
does not solve
system.
dogmatism.
You don't even know. You didn't know what coherentism
You
was
don't-
until yesterday. You just
That's
learned
fine.
it yesterday.
I don't have to know every single philosophical
If you're
word
gonna
to
come
be
to
able
a
to
debate,
engage.
yeah, you should know
then
it
you
the day
should probably
before,
know what
right?
equivocating means when you
Which
cited
you
it
didn't,
incorrectly.
because you used feminism two different ways?
You cited it incorrectly. You said that it's
No,
making two
it's-
things the same.
no, it's
when
not.
you use the
It's
same
using the
word,
word
in a
in
different
different
way.
ways.
Then why did you cite it incorrectly
I
against
clipped
me?
you lying,
used
dummy,
tu quo
yesterday.
pro
I
to
clipped
try
you
to claim
lying
something against
yesterday.
me, but it's an ad hominem from hypocrisy,
I
which you
clipped
cited
you lying
incorrectly
yesterday.
too. When I was looking for
You got clipped
confirmation
lying.
bias, you
100,000
cited
people saw
Gambler's
you lie
dilemma.
yesterday.
Gambler's
My
dilemma has
clips?
nothing to do with confirmation bias. It wasn't what I was looking for. Gambler's dilemma
You mean
has
when I
everything to do
literally
from using
cited-
past post
when I
hoc
cited
information
your
to make
example?
predictions of the future,
When
which
I
has
cited
nothing to
your
do with
example?
confirmation bias. So you,
I
what you
gave
do
you a
in
very
debates
example, you
is you
idiot.
cite a bunch of
The very thing you
philosophically
said was
sounding
what I
words
said.
to feel impressive.
You're
and
not talking to
unfortunately,
anybody but
you
yourself.
don't know
You're talking
what
to
you're
the
talking about,
hamster
and
that's
you
running in
rely
your
on
head on a wheel in your
presuppositionalism
head. There's
to
a hamster
stump
going.
people who don't have like
There's a hamster
philosophical
going,
systems in
and
the
it's
background.
spitting
But
the
you
little
still,
doo-doo balls out of your
to this
mouth
day,
like a hamster
haven't
will.
solved Agrippa's trilemma, and you're stuck.
You don't even
and
know
you
what
know
that is. It has to do with epistemology. I asked you what epistemology was. You didn't even know.
I said Agrippa's-
what's justified true belief? Oh, tell me. You
Agrippa's
don't know anything
trilemma,
about these
I can
topics.
define it for you. It's infinite regression.
I know
it's
that's not
dogmatism,
anything
and it's
to do
circular
with what we're
reasoning.
debating.
It has everything to do with it because
I
you're
don't
saying
believe
that
in
relativism is
foundationalism.
arbitrary, but relativism
It
has
is.
never been viewed as arbitrary ever. It's a
It
philosophical
wouldn't matter if
system
everybody.
based out of
That's an appeal to
foundationalism.
authority, you idiot.
It's not
The
appeal
fact
to
that
authority at all in
If the
any way,
fact
shape,
that
or
nobody
form.
believed that is an appeal to authority because
Moral
it's a vox
relativism
populi.
is a
That's an appeal to
foundationalism
the,
belief.
It's an appeal to the masses,
the reason
you idiot.
why it's not solving Agrippa's trilemma is the same reason
You don't even
presuppositionalism doesn't solve
understand
Agrippa's trilemma.
You don't understand
I
infinite
do
regress.
all the time.
You don't know what
it's the idea
foundationalism
that you
is.
fundamentally
I
cannot
asked
justify
you
any
what-
axiom
I
at
asked
the end
you
of the
what
day because
justified
that
true
everything
belief
must be
is.
circular,
That
including
doesn't mean you understand it. You're repeating what you read already, you idiot.
Presuppositionalism tries to solve Agrippa's
You're
trilemma by
repeating memes that you
presupposing
read.
something,
You're
but it
repeating
relies on
memes that you read.
dogmatism.
This only fools idiots who follow destiny when
That-
you just yap because you think you're destiny.
Take a bet
and
on
you're
the
garbage
IQ average
destiny.
between
You're
Destiny's
garbage
audience
destiny.
and your audience. Take
Are
a
you
bet on it.
serious?
Yeah.
Are you serious?
Yeah.
The garbage person that you tried to,
I would
you
bet
tried to
that the
dissociate yourself
education
with?
level between my audience and yours
Wait,
is
yeah,
vastly
your
disparity.
education-
Yeah, it maps onto IQ pretty well.
Oh, really?
Yep, it does.
What, like in the Canadian system that you were educated in?
He's significantly
That
better
you didn't know what
education system
justified
in
your belief?
America.
Says who?
You ain't got the answers, man. You
Says
ain't
who?
got the answers.
Aren't you guys trying to like
Global
destroy the Department of
standards.
You ain't
Education?
got the answers, Sway.
What?
Aren't you guys trying to destroy the Department of Education? So obviously the system sucks.
Milkshake.
If the system was working, then you wouldn't want to destroy it.
I ain't drinking up.
I don't believe the state
fuck you saying to
education
me, you
system is
little
good.
shit?
No.
I wanted to ask you, Kyla.
How are you not in fucking school?
What's the
Well, no, 1 second. Brian's got to get through his sounds.
Oh, he hit all of them.
It's called you kiss your mother with that fucking mouth? Huh?
What's the meaningful?
Wait, I'm sorry. This is so distracting.
Because the fucking youth of society. You shut up when I'm talking to you. You shut your mouth.
Is it stuck?
Yeah, it's done.
That was so long.
What's the
Sorry.
meaningful symmetry breaker between the tragedy of a man, his whole value being essentially the GDP of the house, and the country having that it's a good thing? It's not a tragedy that the GDP of the country is good. That's a good thing. But at the house level, which is a small country,
Yeah.
it's a tragedy. What's a symmetry breaker that makes one
An
good and one
ecological
tragedy?
fallacy, right? What's good
What?
at like?
What are you saying?
You don't know what an ecological fallacy
Look,
is?
I asked you the symmetry breaker. You
Yeah,
saying
I'm
fallacy, fallacy.
No, I'm answering with ecological fallacy. If you don't know what it is, that's okay. I can explain it to you.
Oh, you're so condescending.
I'm
Answer
being
the question.
Genuine. You don't have to know all words. I actually don't think it's bad if you don't know what it is. But my answer to your question is ecological fallacy. If you want me to explain ecological fallacy, I'm willing to do so.
Cool. You do that after you answer my question?
My answer to your question is an ecological fallacy.
So you can't answer it. So you won't answer it because it's.
You
the
don't know
question-
what that word means, do
Is
you?
a question a fallacy? How's a question a fallacy?
And so the question is an ecological fallacy. Yes, questions can be fallacious.
So asking for a symmetry breaker I want to know the meaningful distinction between
The
something
symmetry
being
breaker is
good-
found in the ecological fallacy. Again, I can define it for you, or you can define it here. But if you want the answer,
Agrippa's
trilemma.
What is that? What is Agrippa's?
It's something that she heard Destiny talk about that she
Never heard
repeats
Destiny talk about
and
it.
has nothing to do with the thing that we're debating. But it's a way for her to deflect away when she gets cornered, and she does it in multiple debates. She did it in their first debate too.
Okay.
But it doesn't fool anybody else in the audience.
Do you want to answer
That's why
his
you
question?
can't tell me what subjectivism and relativism are and how your position justifies.
I can
itself.
answer both of those things. You're
go.
the one who thought absolutism and objectivism are the same thing when they're not
The
synonymous.
words can mean the same thing in the
They
context.
don't mean
you
the same
idiot.
thing in
You're
philosophy
so
at
stupid.
all.
Yes, they do.
Do you want to answer his question on Agrippa's trilemma?
Tell me how your position is
think so.
true if it's arbitrary and if it's subjective.
not arbitrary.
How is subjectivism not arbitrary?
I don't use subjectivism. You were talking about relativism.
Is the same thing.
No, it's
yes,
not.
it is.
No, it's
You're
not.
so stupid. It's the same thing.
Okay, do you want me to
Tell me
define
how
it
it's
for you?
different.
Relativism is looking at the scale at like a group of things and finding things relative to certain points. So, for example, relativism would answer the simple philosophical question: if a man steals bread, is it bad? Relativism would go, why is he stealing bread? If you find out that he's in like a super tyrannical country and he can't feed his children, most people
It's
would
called
agree.
moral relativism.
There you go.
And it's purely
Moral
what?
subjectivism would say, what I like to do is what is right. It is fully centered on I and the individual. Relativism looks at like the outer situation and
Who's
like
looking?
utilitarianism is a great example
this is
of
so
relativism.
silly. This
It's
is
not
grammar. You
subjectivism.
don't understand grammar. If I say I'm a moral relativist, that's a subjectivist position.
It's not. I'll
You're
draw
so
it for
stupid.
you. Here, I can draw it for you so you
I
guys
said
understand.
I am.
She's gonna-
So,
Do you understand grammar?
For those of you who
Grammar.
are not familiar
Grammar.
with philosophy, I guess I'll explain it to the ladies.
Listen to me. You're
there's
talking
an
to the ceiling.
x-axis and there's a y-axis.
If I say
on the
I-
x-axis would be absolutism.
If
and
I
that
say
would be
I am a,
relativism.
this is like talking to, she doesn't talk.
So absolutism is like, do you guys know Kant? You guys ever heard of Kant?
Hey, don't call people that.
Sorry, I'm so sorry.
That's
So
so rude.
Kant had this idea of absolutism, which is that when we come to universal laws, we should apply them to everyone equally in all ways. And the problem with absolutism is that it falls apart really quickly. And the only law that he could find that worked really well
That's
for
not
absolutism in its
position.
old
That's a-
way
no, that's
is that
Kant's a
nobody should lie.
That's a
deontologist.
threshold.
Kant's a
Because he would-
deontologist. It's not what you're talking about.
Deontology can be absolutist. So when we're looking at the spectrum of absolutism to relativism, relativism would say stealing is bad, but it kind of depends on the situation
if
that's
I said
happening.
I'm
so that's
a
how we
moral
gauge it.
relativist-
So an example of relativism
Hey,
would be
I'm
like
talking to you.
utilitarianism.
If I say I'm a moral relativist, is that my subjective state?
Your statement?
Is it my subjective state? I am a moral relativist.
I don't even know what you're trying to ask here.
It's a simple question.
Well, the issue is that you're equivocating.
I am a
again.
moral relativist.
You're equivocating because
No,
you're using
I'm
the
not.
word
You don't know
subjective,
what
and in
the-
the next question you're going to use subjective for a different
You're
purpose.
so stupid
So
that you
subjective
think
could
that a
mean
word-
in this
do you know what a-
situation
do you know what a
your
word
personal
concept
state.
fallacy is?
But then when I answer that question, what you'll do is you'll see subjectivism is a moral system, but this is very different from one another.
No,
do you want to
the
go into objectivism
basis-
versus
no,
subjectivism?
the
Because we can
basis
do
of
that
subjectivism
next.
is
Objectivism is like
relative.
Platonic forms. Have you guys ever heard of Plato? Okay, Plato had this idea that essentially there was ideas that were true. So if we talk about
This
justice,
is like blippy philosophy.
you guys need it too, apparently. So when we talk about like justice,
Is that
Plato,
subjective or
do you want to
objective?
interrupt me or do you want
is
to
that
keep
what
going?
you're saying right now? Is that subjective or objective?
Plato's Platonic
Yeah, yeah.
forms.
No, your account
He
of
used
it.
objectivism for his Platonic
No, what you're
forms.
saying
your
is, it
account
true?
subjective?
Is your account of Plato, is it subjective or objective?
Again, you're just doing an equivocation.
You
This
can't
isn't
answer
like
the
a crazy
question.
That's
gotcha.
not
There's
equivocation.
no answer to your
That's
question.
not an
'cause all you're doing
equivocation.
is being bad faith.
If
You're
I say-
pretending. You're
Listen,
pretending to ask
do you
me
want me
a
to fix
question
it
that's
for you?
looking to adhere to actual
Listen,
response.
I
But what you're actually doing is to
subjectively-
equivocate the
So
word
she's not gonna
afterwards, so you
answer
can
any
trick me.
questions.
Do you want me to finish going through
No,
the
you
y-axis?
don't. No.
You don't know what
Do
you're
we want to
talking
answer
about.
his question on
Nobody
Agrippa's
wants you to keep
trilemma?
talking. Nobody.
Interesting.
Nobody.
Interesting.
Here,
Philosophy King's over here. by the
Nobody
way.
wants you to keep talking.